Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Top Gun, Requiem, by Michael Anderle, narrated by Eva Wilhelm. Chapter 1. Mia's breath came out as soft white puffs in the chilly night air. She kept a tight grip on her rifle, staying low and close to the hard gray bunker wall. Listening for the enemy wouldn't do any good, not when they could move in near-perfect silence. Her eyes had long since adjusted to the dark. The cloudy night made it harder, leaving the gradations of shadows more difficult to pick out. That didn't bother her. A stab light would have given her position away. The guards didn't have better vision than her, and she should play to her strengths. Timing would be key. Taking on multiple opponents ate away her margin of error. A simple miss in a one-on-one firefight might be enough to drive a man under cover and give her greater tactical flexibility. But soldiers with backup were brave. A bullet offered as suppression fire would kill her as easily as one aimed at her. She stopped at the corner, taking slow, even breaths. Her heart kept the same steady rhythm it had for the entire battle. This wasn't a true challenge. If she kept her focus, she'd complete her mission without any trouble, as she had so many times before. A shifting shadow betrayed her enemy's position. She spun around the corner and pulled the trigger twice, barely registering the outlines of two men holding rifles before they dropped to the dark ground. Mia darted forward, staying low. She had broadcast her location with that gunfire and was too exposed on this side of the bunker. She didn't know if the enemy had overwatch. The briefing hadn't been definitive either way. When she reached the end of the wall, her slide added another layer of dust to her pants and took her behind the wall of a metal storage shed and closer to her next destination. A wide pile of scrap and discarded building supplies lay behind the shed and stretched along the back wall of the bunker to form a natural border of concrete, metal, and plastic. Trying to run around it would leave her open, so a small passage through was her only choice. Mia swept the immediate area for targets. A quick point-to-point move took her to the back of the shed without suffering any gunfire. Another second placed her at the mouth of the junk corridor. A new enemy, this one holding a pistol, popped up from behind a slab of concrete. He didn't manage to stand all the way up before she put 2 rounds into his chest. This was too easy. This was turning into nothing more than target practice. Mia advanced down the corridor at a quick jog. Loud shots rang out behind her, and she twisted to return fire at the 2 enemies who'd somehow flanked her. The first man went down with ease, but her rifle chimed empty before she could finish off the second. Damn it! Mia dove behind the concrete slab and beside the body of her third victim, dropping her rifle and reaching for her sidearm. The enemy peppered the area with shots. She stayed behind the barrier, but could hear the gunfire drawing closer. Her opponent eschewed the spray-and-pray approach, instead taking careful shots that thudded against her barrier and all around her. Mia yanked out her sidearm and rolled from behind her cover. She went for a trifecta, 3 shots to the center of the mass, more than enough to take down any unarmored man. 1 round struck the guard in the chest and he staggered backward. The second nailed his shoulder, making him drop his weapon. Mia's final shot grazed his wounded shoulder and sparked against the shed with a loud pinging noise, and the guard toppled backward. She gritted her teeth. The enemy was down, but she wouldn't get maximum points. She'd expected and trained for a perfect run. The bastard had moved more than she'd anticipated, and that was on her. Mia took a deep breath, stowed her sidearm, and retrieved and reloaded her rifle. She still had a job to do. If the pre-briefing intel had been right, she'd picked off most of the exterior guards. Her mission remained the same: breach and find her primary target. She scanned the area. There were no shadows of movement, no loud gunshots, nothing to imply a threat to her. Getting through the corridor and sweeping around should take her to the weakest door in the bunker. Mia hefted her rifle and charged through the corridor before turning to sprint along the back edge of the waste pile. 2 towers loomed on opposite ends of the security fence. They'd once held snipers, but she'd taken those guards out on her initial perimeter run. For the first time in the battle, her heart kicked up and her stomach knotted. Her target had been hidden inside the bunker because the enemy was expecting her. She'd downed enough guards that somebody must have noticed over comms and prepared inside. The hardest part of the mission lay ahead. Mia reached the far edge of the pile, and another short burst of speed took her to the heavy reinforced door and the intimidating numeric keypad. The sloping walls provided plenty of natural cover. Holding her breath, she reached for the keypad. She would have preferred a more explosive entrance to throw off whoever waited inside, but the pre-briefing intel claimed the codes would remain valid for the entire raid. This better work. Mia jabbed the keypad with her finger, imagining each button as the eye of an enemy soldier, until the pad flashed green. A loud, echoing thud sounded, and the door clicked open. Success! She switched her rifle to full auto and threw open the door, then snapped her freehand back onto the rifle. She was unsurprised at the two men waiting at the far end of a long hallway running across the bunker, and as gunfire erupted from inside, she ducked behind the door. The stream of bullets bounced off the thick metal. At a lapse in their firing, Mia shoved her rifle around the corner and offered 2 quick bursts, hoping the men had stayed in position. There were no screams and no new gunfire, so she risked poking her barrel around the door and then her head. Both men lay on the ground, victims of her near-blind firing. Mia rushed inside toward a room she knew would lay behind the open doorway to her right, thanks to the pre-mission intel. Her heart soared and sweat poured down the sides of her face. She was so close to her objective. Hesitation killed, so she wouldn't allow any. Mia dove into the room and behind a table near the doorway. 2 enemies waiting inside opened fire, but taken off guard by her diving entrance, they shot wide and missed her. Mia hit the floor and rolled to keep her momentum, which allowed her to line up a shot into the chest of the first guard before she jumped to her feet and landed behind a thick support column. Enemy bullets riddled the column. Mia counted the shots while she reloaded and switched her fire selector to single-fire mode. She didn't have time to play with the man, and she couldn't risk any more mistakes like the failed trifecta. When she'd counted up to the enemy rifle's capacity, she ran around the corner and placed 3 shots into the man's chest as he reloaded. Before her enemy had hit the floor, she ran toward a table in the center. A datapad sat on the table, flashing a series of codes. It was her primary target. She'd expected more enemies in the back of the bunker. She'd gotten lucky. She narrowed her eyes, taking deep, slow breaths to focus on the patterns. Intel hadn't given the location and had only provided a general briefing concerning the enemy's code regime. That wasn't enough. Careless entry of the stand-down code could end with her swarmed in the bunker and the enemy's coordinated attack proceeding from there. Seconds ticked by. Every lost moment could lead to another casualty. Her breath caught. She recognized the numeric pattern. Mia entered the code into the datapad. The pad beeped and stopped flashing. She sighed with relief and whispered, "That's right. Full retreat and regroup. How do you like that?" She wiped her forehead with her sleeve before consulting her wrist chrono. Her eyes widened. 17 seconds slower? She shouted and ran her hands through her short ash-blonde hair in frustration. She kicked the table so hard it rattled. How the hell could I have been 17 seconds slower? That's nearly 60% worse than my last attempt under these conditions. The score loss from the trifecta is nothing compared to the points I'm going to lose from this time. Mia picked up the datapad with a scowl. The earlier missed trifecta must have affected her more than she'd expected. She'd thought she'd cracked the code quicker, too. She tightened her hand around the datapad, but when she heard cracking, she set it back on the table. Destroying the datapad wouldn't make her time any faster, and she'd have to justify it to her father. It was her failure, not the equipment's. "End scenario!" she shouted. The 2 dead men, their bodies nothing more than light, disappeared along with their weapons. She set her practice rifle on the table and braced herself against it with her arms, biting her lip in frustration. Questions swirled in her mind. Had she missed the shot because she'd practiced too many simulation rounds in a row? Would she have made it if she had used a stab light? That didn't track. She'd mixed hand-lit and dark runs all throughout the night, each time with randomized enemy positions and varied objectives, including direct assassinations alternating with datapad and other recovery objectives. A couple of seconds had been dropped here and there, but not 17. Her 13-year-old self could have done better. She rubbed her eyes, grabbed her practice rifle, and stomped from the room, thinking through her every movement during the training session. By the time she arrived at the door, she'd decided upon a different explanation. Arbitrary randomized ammo limits that emptied her rifle and made her seek cover and switch weapons. The scenario setting had been intended to simulate scavenging equipment from the field without time to check it under fire conditions. The limits had proven troublesome in the past, earning her scorn. Her father had insisted that anything that annoyed her made for better training. Mia gave a firm nod. She'd identified the weakness and moved on to identifying a solution. She couldn't change the scenario too much, so she should change herself. Wasting valuable seconds counting rounds would only give her less time. She would drill harder on her rifle-to-sidearm transitions. Optimally, she would have traded and fired while jumping for cover. She squinted. The sun peeked over the hills surrounding her combatives course on their property at the edge of the Psychovich wilderlands. Mia and her father had built the course together years ago. She was thankful he wasn't there to see her humiliate herself by dropping 17 seconds on a standard bunker breach scenario. The appearance of dawn didn't surprise her. Despite losing 17 seconds, she'd never lost overall track of time throughout the night, no matter the mission or scenario. That was part of her training, too. Chronos could fail, and her life might come down to knowing roughly what time it was. Her gaze slid to the open-air gym beyond the fence. Logs and stones for lifting lay near benches with weight racks, hanging bars, climbing walls, and other conditioning gear, all packed in a tight area near the combatives course. Physical conditioning formed the basis of all true combat ability. Her father had told her that constantly. Another course would improve her time almost without effort if she kept the same settings, but doing the same scenario, even with randomized conditions, would make it too easy. That meant she'd need at least 2 different rounds with different scenarios for it to be a proper training scenario run. She slung her practice rifle over her shoulder, still torn between hitting the gym and running the combatives course for several more runs. Damn it! Mia sucked in a breath. Why did I have to screw up? Improving her time didn't matter. When her father returned, he wouldn't care that she'd managed to bring her time down with quick practice. He'd demand to know why she'd given up so many seconds in the first place. I could hack the system, she whispered. Erase the run record, or insert a foul code and make it look like a broken parameter, forcing a reset. He's told me himself how finicky the system can be. Mia's shoulders slumped. He would notice. He always did. That would only make her failure worse and force her to explain herself. Her stomach churned as she imagined the disappointed look her father would give her if she tried to cheat. Her frustration wouldn't justify it. All those years he had on her, and she'd failed yet again to beat her father's record. Given her last performance, she wasn't going to get closer to matching him this morning. Damn it, son of a bitch! Mia kicked a pebble through the fence on her way to the storage rack, where she shrugged out of her tactical harness and left it inside, along with her rifle and sidearm. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Never let failure cripple you. That's true weakness. My daughter isn't weak. Mia vaulted over the fence and headed for one of the logs. She lacked her father's rippling, bulky form, though she was middling to tall for a woman and her muscles were well defined. She crouched and stuck her hands underneath the huge log, then grunted and pulled until she'd brought the edge up to her chest. Keeping her breathing slow and regular, she lowered the log back down, fighting against the natural urge to let gravity take it down. Shortcuts bred weakness. Settling into a rhythm, Mia continued her reps with the log. Her father had told her that she hit weights most full-grown men would struggle with and most women would never dream of doing. Those same people would tell her moving the log at all was a victory. Those people were weak. She didn't need to beat weak people. Her only true target was her father, and she could never match his weight and rep records without a significant improvement. Mia continued her controlled breathing and quickened her lift pace with her advancing reps until the log was pumping up and down like a piston. She might not be able to match her father pound for pound, but her improvement had been steady over the years. Reaching him in the future wasn't an impossible goal. Oh, perfect. I'll beat him by the time he's a withered old man. That's impressive. Mia Ada Verick, daughter of the great Emery Conan Verick. She needed to be better than everyone, and everyone included her father. Reps flowed together until her muscles screamed for her to stop. She did 5 more after, and then squatted slowly to set the log down. Her father kept telling her to stop trying to beat him and instead beat herself. The objective would always be there, even when he was old and gray. Fight yourself, and no matter who wins, you'll always get better. Mia walked over to a bench where a large, flat boulder lay at the end. She sat on the edge of the bench, stuck her legs underneath the boulder, and, with a grunt, raised her legs, moving the heavy stone with them. "I can see the wisdom, Dad," she muttered. "But how do I know that it's not just your pity for someone incapable of beating you?" As Mia pumped her legs, her grunts grew in volume. She had to do better. She would do better. There was something out there she could beat her father at. That was the only way they'd ever be true equals. She let out a strangled laugh. Her plan had been to beat his records on the combatives course while he was away for a work assignment. Nearly a week on her own, and she'd only managed to come close twice. After today's disaster, she didn't know if it was possible. Mia pushed her legs through the burning reps before finally lowering the stone and checking her chrono. The confirmation that she was ahead of schedule weakened the sting of the night's failures. She had time before she had to return to the house to clean up and begin her studies. That was the one area her father didn't care about as much. He told her to self-select her own areas of study. Her gaze drifted to the simulation pod attached to the back of their combined garage and machine shop. The pod resembled a mechanical octopus trying to eat a giant metal clam with all its cables and tubing burrowing into the bowed walls and swept roof of the garage. Mia rubbed her chin. She could jack in and see if she could tie her father's dogfighting record. That would be a small victory, at least. She sighed. That wouldn't work. She wouldn't want to stop until she hit her goal. That risked her neglecting her studies and earning that terrible look of disapproval. A few hours this evening. Mia returned to the storage rack to pick up her real rifle and sidearm, along with her tactical harness filled with magazines. Target practice offered training and stress relief, a perfect combo to push out the negativity tensing her muscles. 30 meters. 50 meters. 80 meters. Mia couldn't miss a shot. For a brief time, she didn't care that her father could do better, go farther and faster. Allowing herself to smile, she reloaded, but when she raised her rifle for another shot, she froze. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She couldn't put the sensation into words. It was as if she could feel as much as hear a change in the environment. Someone was on the property, and they didn't belong. For a fraction of a second, she considered that her father had returned early and was testing her. Her being armed wouldn't have given him pause. It wasn't like she could kill him on her best day, let alone a day where she'd given up 17 seconds on the combatives course. Her father also wouldn't allow her to detect him so far away. Staying prone with her rifle in front of her, Mia slowed her breathing and surveyed the area. Her gaze passed over the gym, garage, main house, and combatives course. Her instincts screamed at her that someone stood hunkered behind the garage, trying to draw a bead on her. A smile split her face. Her heart kicked up. It was the ultimate test, something better than any simulation or scenario. She faced a real-life intruder. She'd spent her entire childhood and adolescence training for this exact scenario, and now, as a young woman, she was ready to prove her worth and skill to her father by defending their homestead. Mia needed to convince the intruder she hadn't noticed them, so she popped off 2 more shots at the 80-meter target. She waited a couple more seconds, her hands shaking, before she spun and pumped out 2 other quick shots at the corner of the garage and burst away from her target range. She wasn't sure why she'd taken the shots. Pride, perhaps. She wanted the intruder to know she'd spotted them from far away. Fear would disrupt their weapons handling. "What the fuck? Is she crazy?" The intruder hadn't shouted, but she heard them clear as day. Mia couldn't take the enemy lightly. Suppression would limit their tactical options and increase hers. She pumped her legs harder, focusing on putting the combative's course and gym between herself and the intruder. Even good marksmen had trouble hitting fast-moving targets. A crunch sounded from a different direction. She knew what she was hearing instantly. A dry twig underneath a shoe. Mia ground her teeth and her heart hammered. She'd been sloppy. There was more than one intruder. She made it to the bunker and ran around, breaking the line of sight with the first intruder. A cough alerted her to a third. She vaulted over a fence, staying low and rushing toward a tall tree halfway to the garage. The enemy hadn't opened fire yet. Taking them on outdoors would play to their numbers. Luring them indoors would let her constrain their lines of sight. Mia reached the tree. Now closer to the house, she spotted a high-end luxury anti-grav sedan parked in front. No wonder they'd surprised her. The grav drive allowed them to approach in near total silence, and her fatigue and target practice had muted the environmental cues. "Sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I screwed up, but I'll make it right." That morning, she wasn't fighting herself. She was fighting a real enemy. Her duty to herself and her father demanded that she defeat the intruders and protect her home no matter the cost. Mia drew a long, deep breath. For all their earlier surprise, the intruders' movements had grown clumsy. Footfalls marked 3 enemies, all moving around the front of the house. 2 moved much faster than the first. They should have moved around both sides because now she could flank them with her own end run around the house. Their mistake meant she didn't have to take them inside to finish them off. She rushed from the tree and along the house, staying in the grass, and moved around the corner to come up behind the closest enemy. She raised her rifle. Mia blinked. She'd expected brush raiders, the type who cropped up in the wilderlands and targeted isolated homesteads. Not 2 men and a woman in immaculate suits. The woman was unarmed and the men held only sidearms, though they did look to be newer rail pistols. Her father always told her being adaptable was vital in any tactical situation. With the enemies looking the wrong way and unclear about their identities, she closed in on the woman and brought the butt of her rifle toward the unarmed woman's head just as she turned. The rifle hit her nose with a crunch, and the woman dropped to the ground with a yelp. Blood spurted from her nose. The men turned at the loud noise, but Mia already had her weapon aimed at them. "Burst first, minimum range, high muzzle velocity," she intoned. "Drop your weapons or I'll mist you. You're trespassing and I'm within my rights." The men swallowed and exchanged glances. They tossed their rail pistols away, laced their fingers behind their heads, and knelt. "Identify yourselves," Mia demanded. The men stared at her in sullen silence. They didn't move. Mia jerked her weapon toward what she thought was a weapon on the ground near the woman. It wasn't a weapon. It was a glass case holding the folded blue and gray flag of the Kerrick Confederacy of Aligned Planets. An official-looking envelope in the same K-cap colors lay next to it, splattered with the woman's blood. With a groan, the woman rolled onto her side. Blood poured from her broken nose. "We're from the capital. We're here about your father." "You're not bush raiders." The woman rolled her eyes. "Obviously," she moaned. "I think you broke my nose." Mia flipped on her safety. "Come inside. I'll get you ice for your nose." Chapter 2. While the two shame-faced men waited outside by the sedan, Mia led the woman inside. She grabbed ice and a pair of old towels for the woman while glancing again at the men. Taking anyone at their word was dangerous. All trust should be subject to constant verification. Mia had allowed the men to grab their pistols and they'd shoved them into shoulder holsters. Opening fire when their friend was inside didn't make tactical sense. The woman wrapped ice in a towel and pressed it to her nose. "They're supposed to be among the best for security details," she scoffed. "They let themselves be beaten by a young woman who lives in the middle of nowhere. That's why they're scowling. They know I'm firing them when we get back to the capital." "I have been well trained for these types of circumstances, ma'am," Mia explained. "They had little chance against me at my home." "So I've witnessed, Miss Verick." The woman winced. "You can call me Sheila. I apologize for startling you. That wasn't my intent. My men panicked when they heard gunfire." "I don't apologize for defending my property, and I don't apologize for my marksmanship practice. I do, however, apologize for breaking your nose. If it means anything, I'm impressed you maintained consciousness. You're tougher than you look." "Thank you, I suppose." Sheila knitted her brows together. "You're a strange young woman." Mia slung her rifle over her shoulder. The woman's eyes kept darting between the rifle and her sidearm holster. Disarming herself when outsiders were on the property wouldn't be smart. She couldn't take her eyes off the flag case and letter sitting on the table. Her stomach flip-flopped over the implications. The blood covering the envelope, though the result of her own actions, added to the horror and immediacy. She tried desperately to ignore what the flag meant. "Anyway, Miss Verick," Sheila sucked in a breath, "thank you for the ice. This is extremely painful. You're also very strong for a young woman." "My father insists on constant physical training in addition to tactics and skills." "I can imagine." Sheila half closed her eyes and took another deep breath. "My pain is temporary. Yours?" She shook her head. "There's no point in dancing around it. I regret to inform you that your father, Emery Conan Verick, is no longer with us." She gestured toward the flag. "We've come a long way to deliver that flag and letter personally to you." Mia stared at the flag and the letter, swallowing. She reached toward them, but her hand stopped before touching the case. Reading it would validate the woman's message. A pained laugh escaped her. Sheila frowned. Her voice came out muffled with the towel to her face. "Are you all right, Miss Verick?" "No longer with us," Mia echoed. "You mean he's dead?" "I was attempting to be delicate, but yes." "He can't be dead," Mia insisted. "My father isn't a man. He's a force of nature, no more likely to die than tectonic plates or a river. You can't kill a force of nature." "I'm terribly sorry, my dear, but your father is dead. He was killed in the line of duty. I was sent as a representative by the Central Military Ministry to ensure this flag and letter were directly delivered to you." Mia managed to tear her gaze away from the flag and toward the wounded official. She should be interrogating this woman, asking a million questions until Sheila wept all over her pantsuit. Instead, Mia's gaze drifted back to the flag, as if pulled by an invisible force. She stood there, entranced by the symbol of death and honor, until the click of her front door knocked her out of her reverie.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?